Kelly.
Hey, Hayley.
And hello to you joining us for A Measure of Marketing, Season 2, Episode 16, where we are going to chat about storytelling, not selling. So, the approach about storytelling rather than selling. That's one thing, not just one and not the other, the whole thing.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah. I've had a little think
storytelling.
about this.
Mm.
Um, yeah, that's it.
Good. Excellent. Good. Okay. Did it hurt? Were you all right?
Storytelling, not selling. Okay. So I see a lot of people doing one or the other
Mhm,
and not almost like combining the two into their
mhm,
content. So often just a lot of selling, as and I think it's easier to get down that route when you've got like a product or a workshop or something like that.
mhm.
And it's tricky to find the story around it to move people in to buying a ticket for a workshop, for example.
Mhm.
Um, or sometimes I see people doing a lot of storytelling and you're like, what do you do? But the stories more about them rather than like the business element story.
Mhm.
How do you how do you see this topic, Hayley?
I feel I have a slight advantage here because I
Oh,
work with a client who specializes in storytelling.
nice.
And doesn't necessarily mean I know any more than you. But I've worked with them for a few years now, and they provide training and communications upskilling using storytelling because it is a way of sharing and explaining whether you're presenting, communicating, delivering a speech. It's a way of sharing technical information that people don't necessarily
Mm,
remember. It's a way of sharing data that people don't necessarily get by using storytelling instead of just pushing the product and what it sells and does. It's more about the story and the solution and creating a narrative around something that makes it easier to understand.
yeah,
And so that vibe of selling is weaved into it, but it's delivered with a story. Um, and I'm going to get a little bit geeky because this might actually help people.
yeah.
So the company is called 13 Times. And the reason it's called 13 Times is because when you add storytelling to your communication, whether it be brand and marketing or whether it be a sales pitch, you make that communication 13 times more memorable.
Oh,
And
nice.
it's a story that comes from, it's a book called Made to Stick, and it's by Chip and Dan Heath. And the story comes from them teaching a class at university in America. I think it's Stanford. I think it's Stanford. And they asked their students to prepare and deliver a minute's worth of a speech. And what they found is that all of the speeches needed to contain like a few statistics, like two or three numbers. But within all of those speeches, when the students delivered them, there was only a small amount that actually told a story as part of the speech or created some kind of narrative. And so then when they tested the audience, like 10, 15 minutes later, they found that the majority, it was like 60, 65%, so still a good majority, remembered the speeches with the stories, while
Mm,
only a small amount remembered the actual data or the
yeah,
statistics. And so what you're doing is almost flavoring or you're almost prettying up a way
yeah,
of delivering your communication. And I think
yeah,
people tend to forget this. If you have a product and you're selling it and you say what it is and what it does, what you're not doing is tapping into the problem that it solves
yeah,
and the challenge that it overcomes. And there's a story around that, as well as your story behind your brand. So
yeah,
for me, if you can create that engagement, and what better way than with like case studies or testimonials, that tells a
Yeah.
story of how it's helped someone. That to me is storytelling, not selling. So there you go.
Yeah.
There's a bit of
Yeah,
what's the word?
I like
Academia in
that.
that as
Like
well.
there's I the title, the storytelling selling, like the story behind the founder, but there's different parts here. There's a story behind the founder, but then the
Mhm.
story behind the thing that you are trying to sell at the same time,
Yeah.
isn't there? Um, and yeah, interestingly, I tested this out a little bit at a networking event. So there was like 6 tables. So you had like an order of these 6 tables you had to sit
Mm.
on. So there was different people on this table every time. And the first one, I explained what I did and like my experience, blah, blah, blah. And then the next one, I was like, I'm going to try it differently this time. And I started off with a the angle of being a sports person and this. And the next one, I tried a slightly different story and just saw people's reaction levels and like how they sat up
Mm.
and how they like moved in and like they smiled
Mm.
or like they looked blank when you just talked about
Yeah.
marketing. But yeah, it's interesting to try different ways and test it. And one of the cool ways is when you're in front of someone to see their reaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
But tricky as well.
Yeah, I think so. I had a call with someone this morning who's launching a particular resource, let's call it that, that helps people. I won't go into too much more detail because it's not necessarily needed for this, but the way that they're selling the resource is by sharing the story as to how it helped them and why they created it,
Mm,
which is brilliant because it generates that relationship, builds that trust, and people can relate to the story as if they were to position themselves within the story.
yeah.
However, I advise them, don't get too obsessed with I had this problem, I did that, because it's not about you. And I know we've spoken about this before, but it's about the person that has the problem. So the stories, in a way, have to be relatable, but you
Mm,
have to remember that it's not about you, it's what's in it for the person, your target
yeah.
audience that you're
Yeah.
trying to talk to. So there is a fine line. It's not easy to
Yeah.
always craft and flow a story throughout your messaging without it being too me, because it isn't about you. So
Yeah.
it's tricky.
But and then my brain went straight to, okay, so if we need to write stories that resonate with people, and everyone's so individual and their individual reason for not understand marketing or not liking it or
Mm.
their experience of having done marketing or feedback that they've had before, or I don't know, everyone's got their own individual situation, haven't they?
Yeah.
So then you're writing a story based on themes that you hear, patterns that
Yep.
you hear,
Yep.
um, and your then story around the solution, the service that you have that helps to eradicate that
Yep.
problem
Yeah.
that's with woven into
Yeah.
the story.
Yeah. And we've spoken about it before with content and content pillars and the themes and everything else. And maybe
Mm,
the time of year, if you can, the day in the life of XYZ, whoever it is that's your target audience, what stories can you pull from that? Because it's all about being relatable
yeah,
and people remembering what you offer or the product that you provide through that story. So it yeah, it's creating a narrative, and comes back to content and how you weave that in. And there are techniques of how you do it, the techniques of different ways of enveloping a story, if that's the right word, of enveloping a story into it. But yeah, I think it's practice and and really, yeah, just giving it a go and seeing how it works. But yeah, it's hard. It's a style of writing, isn't it? Or a style of
yeah,
communication. Yeah.
yeah. It is.
Analogies and putting in, things like that.
Yeah, it is tricky. And yeah, just going back to what you were saying about the I story, that part,
Mm.
as in like the founder story as well, that I have actually found I've received some like nice feedback from when I work with other solo entrepreneurs that are struggling with their marketing. When I actually say like as in, yes, I get where you're coming from there, and explain over the years I've felt like this, and I don't know if that's empathy or if that's storytelling now when I say it out loud, but the feedback has been, it's really nice to know that even someone that has been in marketing for some time
Mm.
is feels humanly the same way as I do about this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, which when I was thinking about this episode and what I wanted to input, I was like, oh, is that storytelling or is that um just being relatable or is it empathy or I found a story?
I think empathy is a way of storytelling by putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. And I think there's different elements to storytelling, like using metaphors or analogies or being able to create a theme. And I think they're just tools within your toolkit of how you would tell a
Yeah.
story. So you relating to your client or relating to somebody else and being empathetic, you're telling a story that they can align with.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it goes deeper than your typical LinkedIn posts where you see someone say, "Oh, I had this conversation the other day and it got me thinking." Blah 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 blah. Blah. It's like it's a very superficial kind of way of telling a story, and I think
Yeah.
again it comes back to that consistency of how can you create storytelling throughout all of your communication to be able to provide that depth rather than it appear quite um
You just like read,
fairy dust. Yeah, like
yeah,
look, yeah,
churning,
yeah.
churning out.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a point where you don't need to say that you had that comment. Like it could be a story
yeah,
without that opening line of this got me
yeah,
thinking. It's Yeah, and I guess then it's those, for me, my brain goes to, okay, is this a story about me or a story about a conversation of me and her face?
there we go.
Hurry up. Um, yeah, is it a founder story that can still help to sell? Or is it
Mm,
a founder and a client story? Or is it a I've delved into my audience and can tell a story about a pattern that I see quite often. Um, but yeah, I'm going to look into a little bit more about like the structure of stories, I think, after this conversation, because that's
yeah.
important as well, isn't it?
I'll in the notes, I can put in a link to the 13 times YouTube channel
Mm.
because they actually
Okay.
offer loads of different types of tips and things like that. The thing that I struggle with, because I want to include storytelling more in, particularly in the presentations that I deliver, I have this fear, and I'm still learning. But I have this fear that when I start to tell a story as part of a training session or as part of a presentation, that people are just going to get bored. And actually, they're like, we've got a
Mm.
45-minute webinar here. Screw the story. Let's go. Give me the tips. Give me the advice. What should I do? We want the Q&A. We want the advice. And so I think, well, do I continue telling the story? And there's the rise and fall of your voice and everything and all that to
Yeah.
maintain attention. I'm not even going into that, but it's more that I'm going to take 30 to 40 seconds for a dedicated story. It's almost like, am I going off on a tangent for the sake of
Yeah.
it? When I know it works, maybe I've got the wrong end of what story I'm meant to be telling. I don't know.
Yeah. But if it's are you telling a story so that then the audience of that workshop understand the power of
Yeah.
storytelling?
No, I'm telling a story so that they might be able to relate to a marketing strategy or to a theory or a client story so that then they could relate to the learnings that I'm sharing. but it's almost like, am I just waffling now and you're bored of the story and you
Yeah.
just want to get onto the next slide? But that's my insecurity of,
Yeah.
I'm a confident presenter, but when I break it down and I think, right, I'll throw that in here, it's like, oh, is that going to be enough? Maybe it's the way I tell my stories.
You're internalizing that a
A
story
little
is
bit,
right,
yeah,
then that
maybe.
story.
Yeah.
I find though that like, yeah, when I tell, I'm actually delivering something in a few days' time, and I was thinking about this actually in when I got into bed last night, and I was like, do you know what? I am actually going to base the next workshop that I run on a story, legit. Not just
Mm,
saying that because of this podcast. Um, and I find that easier to do, actually.
mm,
Like to, I think because you can add in the kind of the ups and the downs and the pauses
yeah, yeah,
and yeah, I quite like doing that side to it. Um, and I think it can, yeah, I can see the power in capturing someone's attention through it. But I think that because I have had feedback, that positive feedback when I've shared my own story and
mm,
resonated with someone, and they've said that was actually the point that really helped me hearing you say that.
yeah, yeah,
So maybe it's a little like confirmation bias.
yeah, indeed. Yeah, I get that.
But yeah, there is
Mm.
definitely a way to do it. And also like I see a lot of people will do the other part. So it's the story about the personal brand that helps people to resonate with them. And then on another separate occasion, they're selling what they do. And then over time, seeing the story content, the personal brand content, seeing the actual thing that that person sells, it kind of like comes together in somebody's mind, which makes
Yeah,
people like loop back to be like, oh, I remember seeing that person. Oh, and they spoke about this, and I think they sell this. I think that's what they do. And then when the need is there, you go back to that business brand and purchase.
yeah, yeah, and it all then synchronizes. Yeah, I get that. Um, and I think that's the thing, and we always come back to it. Selling isn't really selling, it's building trust and being relatable so that people can see
Yeah.
whether or not what you offer or what you provide meets their needs and solves their
Yeah.
problems. And it is as basic as that, but the skills and the techniques and the approaches can feel overwhelming and can feel hard to manage sometimes. But the more you do it, the more confidence you build with, implementing storytelling, for example, the less it feels like you're storytelling and the less it feels like you're selling.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And there's that point where I think you can like massively overthink it as well, where we probably tell quite a lot of stories in our own way, don't we? That
yeah,
then we actually realize.
yeah,
And then because we're trying to sell within it, we get all that caught up in our head about it. But I think the majority of life is some sort of storytelling. Like, you never guess what happened today. Like, we were
yeah,
literally doing it before we hit record. We was like, I have
yeah,
nothing to tell you. And
yeah.
I've told a story. I've just not then sold
You haven't sold me anything.
a marketing service at the end. But we do actually do it. And if you really pay attention to how you talk when you're telling a story, you do have the ups and the downs and the pauses and the
Yeah,
because that's just naturally how we've been taught in how we've read books and how we've
yeah,
seen plays and movies and
yeah. The element of surprise or of
yeah,
laughter, of telling a joke, or yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
So that could be a bit of homework for people that are listening in is next time you tell a story, pay attention to how you actually said it because you are capable of doing it.
Yeah.
And all of those scenarios in which you see stories around you as well.
Yeah, I had another client who was focused on storytelling too in a different way. And they're very much note the stories where there's an element of change in your life or an element of change in the workplace. There's a story to be told. So
Yeah.
collate all the stories and build them up so that then and he taught you how to use them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's collating them in your little bag of stories and knowing when to use them for what purpose, be it change or, bringing someone on board or,
Yeah.
yeah.
And this is where, without opening up another bag, um, ChatGPT can help, even if it's just
Hmm.
like learning how to write a story
Yeah.
and weaving it back to the patterns that you hear from your ideal customer
Yeah.
and the service that you want to talk about as well. Um, Allowing it to help you with not a template, but just a flow because it might change.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Using it as a trainer.
yeah,
Yeah, get it to work with you rather than do it for you.
yeah,
Adopt the role of a storytelling coach or trainer.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You,
that's good.
yeah,
Yeah. And I think the more that you get into it and you enjoy it and you realize you can do it, like I do when I do my write my emails, I will, as in email marketing, I will use AI to start with. And then I read it and then I'm like, oh, this bit can be a bit exaggerated. And or I would explain this in this way. And I add my own little quirks to it. And that's probably an element of storytelling there into it. Um, and then you'll add an extra line and yeah, bump that bit up or yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's creating that dynamic, isn't it? So that yeah, it maintains people's attention or grabs attention and then you pull them in.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Oh, I'm going to look into them then.
There you go.
Thanks for that. Good conversation.
Very good conversation indeed.
Is it lunchtime now?
I think my tummy is telling me it's lunchtime, so yes. Yeah. Thank you, Kelly. See you on the
Thanks.
next one.
See you later.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Bye.